Good evening, Indiana. Welcome to the Who's Left podcast coverage of election 2024. I am Scott Aaron Rogers here in Bloomington. Joining me tonight is the fantastic Corinne Strait up in Michiana.
Welcome. That's right. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Scott. This will be fun.
I am psyched. Are we ready to see Jennifer McCormick drag this guy one last time?
I can't wait. It's going to be really interesting because the frequency of Braun's campaign ads and stuff has really ticked up after the last debate did not go great for him. But the messaging really has not changed. So it'll be interesting to see if it's just another she supports Biden, she supports Harris type of response from him.
Like they're about to start here, so I'm going to give us some sound.
All right.
The Indiana State Bar Association and the Indiana Coalition for Open Government. Tonight's debate is hosted by WFYI at their television studios in Indianapolis. Founded in 2007, the Indiana Debate Commission is the longest-serving, independent, nonpartisan commission of its kind in the nation. Voters of Indiana are invited to submit questions for future debates.
The debate is definitely way louder,
its work by visiting IndianaDebateCommission.com. And now, the 2024 Indiana Gubernatorial Debate.
Good evening,
that was a very
and welcome
PBS
to the
intro.
2024 Indiana Gubernatorial Debate, organized by the independent, nonpartisan Indiana Debate Commission. We are live in the studios of WFYI in downtown Indianapolis, and in just a moment, you'll hear from the three candidates on the ballot this fall. My name is Laura Merrifield Wilson, and I have the privilege of serving as your debate moderator for this evening. I'm an associate professor of political science at the University of Indianapolis and a member of the Indiana Debate Commission. Now we'll meet the candidates. Their lectern positions in question order were chosen by a drawing. The first candidate is former Indiana Superintendent of Public Instruction, Democrat Jennifer McCormick.
Yay.
The second candidate is current U.S. Senator, Republican Mike Braun.
Boo.
The third candidate is software engineer and libertarian nominee Donald Rainwater.
And in the cuck chair, Donald Rainwater.
The Debate Commission has selected tonight's questions from hundreds of ideas submitted by Hoosiers all across the state. These topics have not been shared in advance with the candidates. The rules for our debate are simple. Candidates will have 1 minute to make an opening statement, then I'll begin the questions. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. Candidates may request an opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal as needed by raising their hands. In the interest of time, we ask that candidates avoid prolonged back and forth debate on a single topic so we can cover as many voter questions as possible. As the moderator, I have the discretion to ask a follow-up question if needed to clarify a candidate's response. Let's begin with the opening statements. We'll hear first from Jennifer McCormick. Ms. McCormick, you have 1 minute to make an opening statement.
Good evening, Hoosiers. I am Jennifer McCormick. I am a wife and I am a proud military mom. I'm a fifth-generation farm family, teacher, businesswoman, local school superintendent, and your last elected state superintendent of public instruction as a Republican. During that time when you voted for me in 2016, you did so because of my values and because you trusted I could get the job done. My values haven't changed, and I proved I could get the job done. This year, the comparison to governor is very contrasted. For one, ask yourself, why do we have a huge surplus but our roads are in disrepair? Why are our teachers and healthcare providers leaving the state and no one seems to care? Why do we have less freedoms today than we did a year ago? And why are your utility costs skyrocketing along with your healthcare costs and no one's doing anything about it? I will address those core issues, but I will also bring common sense and balance. I'm Jennifer McCormick, and I will be your next governor.
Next, we'll hear from Mr. Braun. You have 1 minute.
It's been an honor serving Hoosiers as your U.S. Senator over the last 6 years.
This
I
is
weighed
his
in
debate
in
outfit,
committees,
right? So
health,
this is kind
education,
of,
labor,
he had like
pensions,
just a whole closet of blue
agriculture,
shirts.
all
I'm
issues
imagining,
important to us here, especially healthcare, education, agriculture.
Shake it up.
Also was lucky to go back to my hometown, raise a family, grow a business, 4 kids, 3 of whom work in the business I ran for 37 years. That is the American dream.
And my
when I travel,
babies.
visit all 92 counties every
Still
year.
saying that the
I
American
listen,
dream is
and you learn
business to your
things
children.
like healthcare, education, agriculture, jobs in the economy, quality of life, and public safety are all big issues that I've got experience at. Look at the track records of whether you get something done, not whether you're going to say you're going to do it. And I can give you proven leadership with results and take Indiana to a place we've not been before.
This man has the charisma of a brick.
Finally, we'll hear from
really
Mr.
does.
Rainwater. You have 1 minute.
Good
Couldn't
evening,
even
fellow
spice it up a
Hoosiers.
little.
First, I'd like to thank the Indiana Debate Commission and WFYI for hosting this debate so that you, the voter, can have the opportunity to hear all of the perspectives. President Ronald Reagan once said, you can't be for big government, big taxes, and big bureaucracy and still be for the little guy. Well, we've got a lot of little guys in Indiana who are struggling because of the economy, because of inflation. And we're told that inflation is caused by government printing money and then spending it. And our state government's spending a lot of money. And we need a governor who will stop the bleeding of the spending. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. We'll now go to our first question.
Ronald Reagan
Ms.
quote.
McCormick,
bold.
the economy is top of mind for many voters. What will you do as a governor
Somebody has to pull out the
attract and
founding
retain
fathers now.
well-paid
They have to
jobs?
one-up
Ms.
him.
McCormick, you answer first, please.
Yes,
see
thank you
you,
for the
Reagan.
question.
I
We
raised
put
you with
out our
John
Common
Adams.
Sense Economic Development Plan, and it has been very well received by Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. People were excited because it was very much about common sense and bringing back balance to the State House. And after 20 years of one-party rule, it's time. Our plan addressed, let's do what Indiana's doing well. We're very business-friendly and doing some of those things well, where we're targeting resources to the regions where they need to go. So we will continue that. But also, when you look at what we're not doing well or where we can step it up is the human capital. We need to make sure that our workforce is healthy and we are educated, and our consumers are healthy and they are educated. That means prioritizing getting those healthcare costs down, making sure we have reproductive freedoms, also making sure we have access to health care, and prioritize education, including child care for our youngest of young Hoosiers. For us, it's about common sense and it's about balance.
Thank you. Mr. Braun?
So this is probably the category I feel most comfortable with. Educated with a economics degree from Wabash College, MBA. Moving back to my hometown, there's nothing you learn more than when you get involved in a small business.
He didn't say where he got his MBA.
I did that for nearly 20 years.
Is that a dirty word to
scaling it into a
conservatives?
regional,
Harvard?
eventually national company. 3 of my 4 kids now run it. Again, that's the American dream. If you're really going to have an idea of what to do, I think it's important that you've lived through it. I've signed the front side of a paycheck my entire career. And that business grew from a little one to a regional national company. Our state has all kinds of potential.
There's just money in his account.
Economic development out across all corners of the state. We need to fertilize the field of small business and entrepreneurs. And the one entity that is for small business, National Federation of Independent Businesses, endorsed me in this race.
Thank you. Mr. Rainwater?
Wow, that was a whole lot of
Hoosiers,
nothing.
first of all, we have to realize that they're telling us that the economy is doing great, but when you sit down at your kitchen table, you probably know that that's not the life that you're living. Inflation is really, really hurting most Hoosiers. And the reality is that we don't need more jobs. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce says that we have a worker shortage in this state. We need to stop bringing in more jobs because these jobs that they keep bringing in are causing people to leave small businesses, and these small businesses are having to close because they can't staff themselves. And the reality is that's happening because they don't really care about small businesses in Indiana, just the big corporations, and we need to change that.
Thank you. Several Hoosiers
We don't
shared
need
concerns
jobs.
about a lack
These
of
were state
affordable
takes.
housing.
That is an interesting
Michelle, a
take.
resident
I
of
hope that's
Anderson
his
who works in
slogan.
real estate, says,
No
"We
jobs.
currently have a shortage of affordable houses and have not planned for future population growth." And she asks, what will you do as governor to help with the housing supply and affordability in Indiana? Mr. Braun, this is your question first.
So affordable housing is one of the things I hear, along with childcare, rural broadband, that tier underneath healthcare and education. And I'm already out there finding entrepreneurs that are looking for solutions. Cook Medical Group, a friend of mine that runs that business, has found out how to actually build a 3-bedroom home that you can afford. And he did that during COVID. We're not going to fix it through government. We want to make sure that our own state gets out of the way, doesn't have regulations that are going to make it difficult, but entrepreneurs will figure that out. The federal government is not going to be weighing in and doing it responsibly. Our own state can help make that easy for the folks that know how to do it.
Oh, there
and
is
a lot
so
of that
much
had to
the
do
state of Indiana
with the
could do to help with
contractor
this.
getting along with the local jurisdiction to make sure utilities got stubbed in a way that was going to really reduce the cost of a starter home.
Thank you. Mr. Rainwater.
Well, folks, first of all, one of the things that affects affordable housing is property taxes. And we need to do two things with property taxes. One, we need to make sure that they never go up. Two, we need to make sure that they have an end date. I've proposed a plan that would do that. Secondly, we need to understand that our current government system is rewarding development of big, new, expensive houses, and nobody has an incentive or a reason to go rehab the existing homes that are in places like Muncie, Anderson, that are sitting vacant, and we need to go ahead and refocus on actually rehabbing areas so that there's affordable housing for young families.
Government put money into that,
Mr.
Don?
Braun, I see that you have a rebuttal, but I'd like to give Ms. McCormick the opportunity
Government
to speak
has
first,
to,
and then you can
oh
rebut.
no, that's
Thank
communism. Hard stop.
So obviously the state government needs to work with our local level leaders, but I do want to address, we put out a common sense property tax plan that was bipartisan, that went very, very well. And because of that, people were comparing it to other candidates. Mr. Braun's had to be revised a few times because it didn't do that. It didn't return money to where the money needed to go back to Hoosiers. Also, Mr. Braun brought up childcare and broadband, and those are two areas that he voted against in Indiana. So those monies that could have come back federally when he was a U.S. Senator, he voted against $1 million for broadband and against the child's tax credit. That's how you put money in the pockets of Hoosiers so that we have more for housing. But it goes back to our common sense property tax plan, but it also goes back to fair lending and making sure that we're protecting our renters and being a good partner with our local level leaders.
Thank you. Mr. Braun, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal, please.
So property taxes have been by far the most discussed item in the last 2 years. I've been visiting every county. And it's also the lifeblood of school districts and local government. So you'll have to be entrepreneurial. You're going to have to make sure they are funded properly. But when you're growing taxes faster than the ability of the taxpayer to pay it, you're going to be shoving people out of their homes. That would be counterproductive. My plan's being received well.
By whom? It's not being received well by
several
anybody.
questions from voters who are interested in education and believe it's an important step for the governor to set a tone on education policy. Laura, an independent voter from 12 Mile, noted that Indiana is a school choice state with near universal eligibility to participate in the school voucher program. She asks, what is your position on school choice? And should private and charter schools that accept taxpayer money be held to the same standards and testing requirements as traditional public schools? Mr. Rainwater, you get to go first.
If they have to.
So, fellow Hoosiers, first of all, I am 100% in favor of universal school choice. But we need to understand that our public school system is a monopoly in the state of Indiana, and monopolies traditionally drive down quality and drive up cost. We spend half of our state budget on public education in Indiana, and according to our statewide standardized testing, only 63% of our students are proficient in math and English. When I was in school, 63% was an F. So we have a lot of work to do to
and those
rethink
numbers have
education
dropped
completely from the ground
school choice
up.
has been implemented.
The common school philosophy was great in
Half
1837,
of this
but
class
this is
dropped
2024.
out to go work in the factory.
Thank you. Ms. McCormick?
Hoosiers are concerned about education, and rightfully so. I inherited a state that was ranked in the mid-30s, and now we're down to 41st. And so it is very concerning. I also know, too, that that's because of 20 years of one-party rule that has had total control of education policy that has been signaled by many, many practitioners this isn't working. And we have to have an educated and healthy workforce, and we have to have an educated and healthy consumer. I am for not school choice. I am for parent and student choice. And there is a big difference. Indiana's system is school choice, where the schools can pick and choose who they want to take for a lot of different reasons. It's not up to the parent, and it's not up to the child. I'm about making sure all kids have access to a world-class education. And 90% of our families have said that is public education. And Indiana is on a dangerous path of attacking public education to a dismal response of our economy and also educational attainment. I will bring that back.
Boom.
Yep.
Mr. Rainwater, I see you have a rebuttal, but I'd like to give Mr. Braun his opportunity to answer the question first. 60 seconds, Mr. Braun.
I can't wait for Rainwater's rebuttal.
If you don't have choice and competition, you're trying to defend a one-size-fits-all system. And over time, things have got to evolve, and parents should be in the driver's seat. No doubt about it. I could not get that out of the Secretary of Education when I interviewed him on health, education, labor, and pensions. And we need to make sure we align it in a way that it's data-driven, that we're creating skills, training, directions for what college degree, based upon high demand, high wage jobs.
Control over the balance.
Okay, no, that's much better. Talking like that is much better. I lose you sometimes.
I'm always afraid that I'm like too loud.
I am too. I'm a classically very loud person.
But it's never going to be done with one system that doesn't have options for parents and kids. Choice is a part of it. Good public school systems like my kids went to and my grandkids and myself will always be there, and they'll be enabled, but it's got to be measured, and it has to be based upon results.
Mr. Rainwater, I'll give you 30 seconds for rebuttal, and then Ms. McCormick, you may also have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Oh, you're just wasting all our time.
Fellow Hoosiers, government's main focus today is on creating dependency. They want you to be dependent on them, so that they can tell you what to do, so they can tell you where to go and what to think. And there's no place that is a bigger problem than in our public school system. We need choice so that parents and students can decide what the educational opportunities are and what they should do with them.
Thank you. Ms. McCormick, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
No regulations.
Like many Hoosiers, we understand the concept of being fiscally conservative, and it is a shame that we've moved away from that with 20 years of one-party rule. I believe in making sure that we are watching programs when $1.6 billion is going into a program that is not getting academic results, that is having private schools boom everywhere without any transparency or accountability. It's $1.6 billion, and Hoosiers deserve accountability, transparency, and some answers.
Hoosiers across the political spectrum, from Evansville, Wheatfield,
Milton,
and Franklin to Greenwood,
Since
Gaston,
when does parents
and
become
Indianapolis
the
submitted
experts
questions about your plans for reducing
an entire
property
educational
taxes.
system? That is
Several
just
retirees expressed concern that they won't be able to make
one of the
ends
dumbest
meet,
arguments
while
for
current
me.
workers wondered how each
You know your
candidate would
kids,
maintain
yes,
services
you know your kids
currently
very well, but
funded
that does
by
not mean
property
you
taxes,
for Liberty
including
Club whistle
police,
there.
fire, sidewalk, and street
Gosh,
repairs,
does not mean you
parks,
understand
libraries, and other
curriculum.
local services. The question is this: how will you balance Hoosiers' desire for low property taxes with the choice to maintain critical services, many that we've already heard about this evening? Ms. McCormick, you'll answer first, please.
We just tax
Property taxes are a huge concern across the state of Indiana, and I've told Hoosiers as soon as I am elected, we have a plan, day one, ready to go. It has a fiscal, which my opponents did not. It has language, which my opponents did not. It was well received because it has bipartisan from great senators who are Republican and Democrat, and it's ready to go. It gives relief to every single Hoosier, particularly seniors, renters, and veterans, and all homeowners, but it also protects the local level. Having been a local superintendent, and I understand the power of police, fifth-generation farm family, we have to protect that local level. So we have parks and fire and police and schools. And so my opponent's plan went after that and 25% increase for farmers, and that's just not going to work for Hoosiers.
Thank you.
It's so
Mr.
interesting
Braun?
that all of the economic data that's come out from like
is make sure that
Michael Hicks
each
talking
year,
about
government
kind of the
does not
problems
grow
with all
faster
three of these plans
than your
and how
economy, number one,
if none of them
or the
do
ability of
anything,
taxpayers to
taxes
pay
are
it.
still going to go down
So my
next year
plan
because
clearly
the
put a
property
lid on
values
the
are
bill
going down after
to where
that
it can't
huge
go
bubble.
up more than 3%
So
for
somebody's
everyone.
going to claim a victory that their
2%
plan
for
worked and
vulnerable
it
property
was
taxpayers.
unnecessary.
And then when it comes to what's happened to homeownership, that's kicked the most vulnerable out of their homes with property taxes going up. It resets it to where it was pre-COVID. And for the jurisdictions that took their rates down to reflect the increase in assessed value, it won't impact them at all. For the ones that didn't, it's going to be transparent. You won't be able to hide behind an opaque system. And if you want more, you appeal to the taxpayers and ask them for it. Don't do it behind closed doors.
Thank you, Mr. Braun. Ms. McCormick, you asked for a rebuttal, but I'd like to give Mr. Rainwater the opportunity to answer the question first. 60 seconds, sir.
So, fellow Hoosiers, that's a lot of word salad.
He
The
starts
reality
everything with fellow
is
Hoosiers.
that neither plan from
I
my
love it.
opponents
I'm Donald
keeps
Rainwater.
property
I don't want
taxes
egg salad.
at a static level.
I don't want words in my
And
salad.
neither one offers a way where property
I want rape.
taxes end. The government uses
yellow
TIF
tie and the
districts,
egghead.
tax abatements for
I'm getting egg vibes
corporations
from this guy.
to make sure that local government can do things with your money that don't involve local services. Local governments have plenty of other funding mechanisms. You need to be able to live in your home and have the security to know that your property taxes will never increase and that someday they will end, so that you don't have government standing over you threatening to take your property if you fall behind.
Thank you. Several voters. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Ms. McCormick, you have a 30-second rebuttal. My apologies.
I can't
Yes,
wait to
I
hear what
listened
the
to
plan
Mr.
is
Braun
when
talk
the
about his
taxes
plan,
end.
and like I said, ours is ready day one with the fiscal, with language, well-received, bipartisan language from a lot of smart senators in our state house, and I want to know for clarity for the Hoosiers which version that he was talking about, because for the mayors and at the local level, our police, our firemen, and our schools, they are very, very concerned about what's coming out from Senator Braun's team, because it's nonsensical, it is not doable, and it's not ready on day one, and we still don't have a fiscal.
Mr. Braun, you requested 30 seconds as well.
That may
for
be
that.
your opinion of it, but from all the mayors and councilmen and commissioners I've talked to, they like the plan because it's clear.
The second version
You're going to
or
have
the first version?
It's clear
Let's let
because
Mr. Braun
it is going to actually address the issue. And there are other ways to raise revenue. Yours is unchecked. And by the way, when you were running the school system, things got worse after you were there, and that's your only involvement in public service. Property taxes, I'd take issue with that you're going to have a way to actually remedy the problem.
Mr. Rainwater, you also requested a rebuttal, but I'll remind the candidates we have so many great voter questions we want to get to.
Mentioned, though.
So I'm going to give Mr. Rainwater 30 seconds here to rebut first.
Fellow Hoosiers, I just want to point out to you that
every time
my opponents
Thank you,
are
Donald.
arguing
I like
over
it.
which group of bureaucrats support their property tax plan. Nobody other than me is talking about how property taxes affect you and what you need to worry about. They're worried about other bureaucrats supporting them.
Because he
Thank
thinks
you.
taxes shouldn't exist.
I'd like to go ahead and move on. Ms. McCormick, you'll have the opportunity to address that in the future, and I very much appreciate us being able to tackle so many great voter questions that we received. So several voters expressed concerns about a perceived worker shortage in the state. Melissa, a social services worker from Evansville, notes that people with disabilities have doubled the unemployment rate of people without disabilities and suggests this is a large pool of potential opportunities that employers are underutilizing. Melissa asks, what
Well,
are your
according to
plans to
Rainwater, we've
address
got too many
unemployment
jobs,
for disabled
so-
persons in the public and private sectors?
Too
Mr.
many
Braun,
jobs.
it's your turn to
No.
go first, please.
So workforce over the last 6 years of traveling the state has been by far, until property taxes came along, what most Hoosiers are worried about, because we currently have it imbalanced. We don't produce enough STEM degrees, that highest stratum of post-secondary education. We need more of them. But we've got 150,000 jobs that need better trades and skills. And among the disabled, among those that are in our Department of Corrections, we've got to tap all those sources and make sure that we're getting folks there to capture these high demand, high wage jobs. $3 to $4 billion we'd put into the economy. If we don't get it right, you send somebody on the wrong route in life, you end up leaving the state to find a job back in the basement. That's the single biggest thing we can get done right. And I've got a lot of experience at getting it done, building a business, and being on committees in the Senate and back here that weigh in on it.
Mr. Rainwater.
We're going to the basement. We're out of the basement.
Fellow Hoosiers,
Hello, Hoosiers. Yeah, we're here,
I
Rainwater.
can't tell you what's best for you. I can't tell you what the right path is to put you on. That's for you to decide. And when it comes to the issue of better employment for disabled Hoosiers, what we need to do is we need to sit down and we need to talk about what are the real roadblocks that you're experiencing. And what can we do to remove those roadblocks? It's not about telling you what path you need to take. That's authoritarian government, and that's not what we're supposed to have based on our state constitution. What we need to do is learn from you and help you remove those roadblocks.
Thank you. Ms. McCormick.
Okay, I mean, listening to people's not
This
bad.
is an area
but
that I'm
that's really
passionate
not an
about. I was a
answer.
special education teacher, and I know how important these services are. I've already started meeting with organizations, and I know what our state agencies do in this space, and they need to come together with that local level. But it's about transition planning for every individual with their families. It's about figuring out housing. It's about figuring out transportation, and also those basic skills that they need with career coaching. There's a lot that can be done in this space. I'm ready day one to prioritize it because it truly is my passion. And I have to just mention Senator Braun's last comment that I didn't get my chance to comment on. You know, he mentioned that for 4 years I was a public servant and that was it. And I will say, shame on you. I was a teacher for 25 years. And if we're saying that teachers aren't public service, that sends a true message to Hoosiers of who you are. I was proud of my service, and I will defend every single teacher in the state of Indiana and the United States for the public service that we do for our kids, our family, and our communities.
Voters from all partisan backgrounds submitted questions about how to protect
Indiana's
Indiana's natural resources. Greg, an independent from Terre Haute, asked, how will you protect Indiana's natural spaces, water resources, and environment while also supporting Indiana's robust agricultural, manufacturing, and supply chain industries? Mr. Rainwater?
Well, first of all, fellow Hoosiers, we need to realize that government is attacking our natural resources, our family farmers, and they're doing it because they're prioritizing corporations above what's best for the citizenry. And so what we need to do is we first of all need to understand that we have laws in this state that we need to enforce, whether there's a wealthy corporate donor that wants to build something somewhere or not. One of the things that we really need to refocus on is what our government is doing and why they're doing it.
Thank you. Ms. McCormick?
There are a lot of areas in this that need to be addressed, from responsible logging to I've already called for a state water management plan with our local levels to have insight because of a lot of the issues like LEAP, where we want economic development, but we need clean water, clean air, and we need to protect our soil. My dad was a soil water conservationist from the USDA, and I grew up knowing how precious those natural resources truly are. I also know, too, that it's so important to talk about utilities in this space. So we're moving in a sensible way to renewable energies. My opponent just was a barrier and came out and told the coal companies that he would not allow them to transition or to shut down and go into more renewable, which is the government getting in the middle of something where we shouldn't be. So there are a lot of areas that we can do. We deserve clean air, clean water, clean soil, and it's called being environmentally aware.
Thank you. Mr. Braun?
That'll be an easy one. For the last 40-some years, lived on a farm, have done practices like riparian buffers, grass waterways, cover crops. The only one here, I think, involved in agriculture just today was acknowledged by the Indiana Farm Bureau for 6 years of achievement in the U.S. Senate on that very issue. To understand agriculture, which is one of the most difficult jobs God has ever created, it's a lot different than it was many years ago. And the practical experience of being a tree farmer, took the Purdue Sharp course on forestry, being involved with it is going to give you a much better idea what government's involvement should be with natural resources. I've lived it. I practiced it on my own farm, and I will take that experience. I think that would put me in a position to weigh in on that with many years of doing it, not saying what you might do.
Thank you, Mr. Braun. Mr. Rainwater and Ms. McCormick both
farmers
asked
got to unwind somehow.
Mr. Rainwater, it's yours first.
Friends, when Senator Braun talks about his experience with farming, I would encourage you to go down to Du Bois and Martin County and ask the family farmers who are having their land taken away.
I wonder if he has that in his notes.
The Mid-States Corridor.
Like he ticks it off how many times. He's like, oh, I got to move on to Friends now.
And his support for family farming in the state of Indiana. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McCormick?
You know, again, I know Senator Braun wants to be dismissive of everybody's background, but I'm a fifth-generation farm family, and agriculture has been incredibly important to my family for generations. And so I understand the importance of making sure that we're taking care of our soil and our water and our air as well.
Somebody on my TikTok was like,
Senator Braun he is a senator, but when he voted, he always voted against the farmers, whether it was an insurance bill. And did you ever introduce a bill that would have helped farmers? He was there in D.C. as an
what
insider.
Did he get recognized for by the Farm Bureau?
Mr. Braun, would you like to rebut?
Acknowledged in the U.S. Senate
taking their money
by 2 different groups for getting the most legislation passed on agriculture, healthcare, and education. 2 different groups. Get your facts straight before you say something like that.
I want to move on for the sake of time.
Healthcare.
So we're going to focus on our next issue. Thank you, candidates.
That's interesting.
Hoosier voters asked about gun rights and gun regulations, wondering how you'll balance support for Second Amendment rights with concerns about gun violence. What changes, if any, do you support to Indiana's gun laws? Ms. McCormick?
So I'm the only candidate here that has been responsible for an entire school system or who has watched kindergartners do a drill because of the fear of someone coming into school with a weapon. And there are a lot of things we can do. First of all, listen to the state police, and we'll bring back common sense and balance to the state. It's about making sure that we're looking at common sense gun violence prevention measures that are widely supported by Republicans and Democrats. I own a gun. I am very pro Second Amendment. No one's coming for anybody's guns. It's about responsible ownership and responsible use. It's also about making sure that we get the care that is needed when people are vulnerable and may need assistance in area of mental health. My opponent has called for the red flag laws to go away, or maybe his lieutenant governor opponent, and that is dangerous. Why would we take away something that the state of Indiana has said makes a huge difference in the safety of our communities? That's just irresponsible.
Mr. Braun?
Well, I'll correct her out of the gate there. Red flag laws have worked well here. They need to be actually improved, though, because that is the first step to keep guns out of the hands of the mentally ill, or folks that are having trouble with some issue and they resort to a gun. Keeping guns out of the hands of criminals. But when it comes to our Second Amendment rights, I'm the one that has defended that with a spotless record, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try hard to make sure, with everything you have at your disposal, to make sure criminals do not get guns and the mentally ill. And the red flag law is designed for that, and I've been for that ever since we've had it here.
Ms. McCormick asked for a rebuttal, but first I'm going to go to Mr. Rainwater.
Fellow Hoosiers, first of all, let's establish something that is just common sense fact. Criminals don't follow laws. That's why
we didn't
they're
have any
criminals.
laws.
So
no
when
laws.
we say that we need more gun laws to stop criminal activity, that's just not common sense. If we want to make sure that our children are safe at school, we need to make sure that our schools are as secure as 200 West Washington Street,
like
the State
seatbelt.
House down here in Indianapolis.
Worked, right?
I oppose the red flag laws because
I'm
we're
sorry,
that
freedom.
close
Crap.
to our government telling us that because we go to this church or we're a member of that organization that we have a mental defect and therefore they need to take our guns. That scares me, folks, and it should scare you too.
Ms. McCormick,
Because
30
I do
seconds
in
for rebuttal,
fact have a
please.
mental
Yeah, this
defect.
goes back to the Beckwith-Braun ticket being
I'm going to go on the
extreme.
record and
Micah
say I
Beckwith
am
is
terrified.
one
Yes,
heartbeat
thank
away
you.
from
I am
that
scared,
office,
Donald.
and we should
Thank
all
you.
be paying attention. He has called for the red flag law to go away. I've had to use the red flag law as a local administrator to save lives in a school. He also said he wants his guns untraceable and unregistered, and that is just scary.
Untraceable, period.
Mr. Braun, since your name was mentioned, you
period.
could have 15 seconds.
Well, she constantly defaults to something other than what we're talking about, who's going to be leading the state. And my record on all these issues are clear. I've been at it for 6 years in the Senate, was a legislator 3 years. You can look it up. Everyone else is saying what they might do. And when it comes to that, my record's clear. Theirs would be either non-existent or murky.
Many voters submitted questions about Indiana's abortion laws.
Murky.
Could you please share with us your position on Indiana's
Oh,
current
we're going
abortion
from
law?
guns to abortion.
Does it go
We are
too
doing
far,
it.
Not far
All
enough,
right.
or just far enough in restricting access to abortion? Mr. Braun?
So I think when our legislature took on that task a couple years ago, they vetted it with the people of this state. And when you believe in the sanctity of life, I think it was reflected in a way that put a bill out there that was vetted carefully with reasonable exceptions that reflects the general tenor of our state. You got to remember, it was done with a lot of time put into it, talking to their own constituents, and it passed with a large majority. So I think if you don't believe
that's the Republicans in office.
people are talking to their legislators and coming up with a good product, I think they did that, and it's a place where it's
Let's put it on the ballot, Braun.
vetted it, and it's should have gone back to the states a long time ago.
Mr. Rainwater?
Just like interracial marriage, Mike?
Fellow Hoosiers, this is an issue that in no uncertain terms, you need to make your voice known. I trust the citizens of the state of Indiana to reach out to their legislators and let them know what they believe needs to be changed, if anything, in this law. This is something where we need to hear your voice, not you need to hear ours. Thank you.
Do you trust us,
Ms. McCormick,
to take care of our own uteruses?
I just want to bring attention to something that was said just now. Our extreme abortion ban was called a good product by Senator Braun. Women are dying. A lot of women's health are put at risk, and he called it a good product. It has also not been vetted. We don't have a citizens initiative ballot, which I will fight for because Hoosiers deserve to have a voice. I'm the only person on this stage who's been pregnant, who's given birth, and know firsthand the complexities with pregnancy. I was very fortunate. I have an amazing son. I didn't have complications, but I have friends and family who
got a baby right now in my head.
In that situation, you have got to have options. There are men and women who are with me on this. Hoosiers have spoken. Over 60% of Indiana wants those standards returned to Roe. My opponent has said they didn't go far enough. Beckwith is saying take away the exception for rape and incest. And Mr. Braun is now saying it's a good product. That should tell you everything we need to know about who would serve as a good governor.
Kurt from Logansport, Tyler from Yorktown, Ed from Fishers, and Adam and Deborah from Indianapolis come from different cities, professions, political parties, and age groups, but all had the same basic question. Do you support the legalization of cannabis in Indiana? If so, under what circumstances and why? Mr. Rainwater?
Fellow Hoosiers, I am the only candidate in this debate who believes that we currently have the government structure by having regulated tobacco, alcohol, and prescription drugs that we can and should legalize all forms of cannabis immediately. We don't need bigger government. We don't need any new commissions. What we need to do is recognize that your unalienable right to choose what you put in your body is not up for discussion by the government. It doesn't matter what the federal government says. It doesn't matter what the state government says. This is something that is a constitutional right that's being ignored, and we need to fix that.
Ms. McCormick?
I'm the only candidate that has put out a plan. We put out a common sense cannabis legalization plan that was very, very, again, well received, because over 80% of Hoosiers are ready for this. We are an island on our own, but we have to do it right. We have to be realistic on how to get this passed and then how to make sure we do it successfully by learning from other states who did it well and other states who did not do it well. We're looking at a commission going into medical use and then eventually going into adult use. There's $177 million potentially on the line right out of the gate, and we deserve that revenue to come in for those local services that we need so dearly. Also, it's hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs that are on the line. It's time. I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of experts in this area, and a lot of Hoosiers, and it's time to do this. So day one, we will get started with our commission.
Mr. Braun?
So when it comes to what's happening with cannabis, it's clear. It's cascading across the country, and medical use of it is probably going to be in every state sooner or later. I can tell you, though, I'm going to be talking to law enforcement. I'm the only one here on this stage that's been endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police and the Indiana State Police Alliance. And they will have to put up with the brunt of whatever we do. And when it comes to what happens down the road, obviously the federal government is allowing states to craft what makes sense in their own states, and it is moving across the country. Medical marijuana, I think it's time for that to probably take place. I'll listen to the legislature, I'll listen to law enforcement, and we'll come up with something that's going to make sense for Hoosiers.
Is that a position?
And what happens beyond that, I think we will evolve in that into a way that makes sense. Start with medical, find out what happens down the road.
Mr. Rainwater, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal, sir.
Fellow Hoosiers, I just want to point out
Fellow Hoosiers.
Obviously, here Mr. Braun says he'll listen to law enforcement. Now, my grandfather was a police officer, so I know what it means to value law enforcement. He says he'll listen to the General Assembly. I didn't hear him say he'd listen to you, and that's a problem. And that's a problem with just about everything we have going on in government today in the state of Indiana. They're not listening to you.
Ms. McCormick, you'd like 30 seconds for
that is true.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. After 20 years of one-party rule, we still have people in the Republican Party who will say they'll listen to the local law enforcement. We didn't listen to them about permitless carry.
Donald Rainwater.
I
gotta look
them
it
about
up.
protecting red flag laws. There are times where we're picking and choosing when we talk to local law enforcement. They are our law enforcement. We need to respect them and listen to them in all circumstances.
Several Hoosiers had questions about the state budget and how to keep it balanced. Amanda, a political independent and state employee from Indianapolis, would like to know if you plan to downsize state agencies, eliminate state jobs, or cut state employee salaries. If so, she asks, which agencies do you plan to target? She offered examples of environmental management and the health department. Ms. McCormick?
Well, first, that would be very irresponsible for me to answer that right now. But believe me, day one, we're looking, even as soon as we're elected, the day after election, we are looking at all the agencies. We're looking at that budget to see where we can cut. And if cuts can be made, we certainly will look at that. What is alarming with this is, I know from being at the State House for 4 years, we have amazing people who work for the state of Indiana across the state, and they have really good jobs. And I certainly don't want to cut their salaries because many of them are underpaid. But just last week, my opponent's ticket came out and said he would fire state employees because they're liberal, and they would start with the ones that have a pronoun in their signature, which is highly illegal. That's the type of leadership that is extreme that we are up against. Hoosiers deserve better than that. Our state employees deserve to be represented and respected and not have threats of someone coming in to fire them because of what they think they believe or what they think they were told. It's just irresponsible. And I know Mr. Braun at one point said he believes everything Micah believes,
Thank you,
and so
Ms.
we need
McCormick.
some answers.
Mr. Braun.
They're the same
this will probably be the
person.
task that will yield the most benefits for Hoosiers. It's a $22 billion budget.
But he's a
K through 12 is half of that. Post-secondary is another 15%. But you're only going to know how to pare down an agency or add to it, depending on the need, if you've had the experience of actually doing it in your own past experience, building a business. Main Street
there it is.
into a regional business, then a national business. You've got to make those decisions all the time. And when it comes to what you'd gain by just 5% savings that you can invest in a lot of other things or send money back to the taxpayer, that is $1 billion. And regardless of who's been running it,
He needs
that
a
can be
whiteboard
pared
or
down.
something
You
with
can
all
run
these
it more
numbers.
efficiently and get better results. Not spending more money like some parties want to do, regardless of the issue. Make it work well with the resources you've got.
Ms. McCormick, I'll give you 30 seconds after Mr. Rainwater's had the opportunity
so many
to speak.
words, and it's
So here's what's not being said tonight.
Come to the budget as a
In 2020, Governor Holcomb sent out a memo to all the state agencies saying, hey, because of the pandemic shutdown, we don't know how much revenue we're going to get from taxpayers, so I need you to cut all of your spending by 10 to 15%. Not 5, 10 to 15%. They did that. Nobody got fired. There were no essential services cut. They got rid of the corporate crony capitalism and all of the fraud, waste, and abuse that goes on every year in our state government. They cut 10 to 15%, and they ended up with a $6 billion surplus. We can do it. It doesn't take one guy who's had a business for 37 years. There's an entire state bureaucracy that knows what's going on. They just need to be held accountable. Thank you.
Ms. McCormick, 30 seconds.
I love that he got closer to the microphone and he got more excited.
I don't know if Mr. Braun's referring to the Libertarian Party, but I certainly don't, nor do the Democrats I've talked to. I have to just say that when I was in state office, I was responsible for over half of the state budget, which is the K-12 budget. And what we did is prioritize. And when you budget based on priorities, which for me will be healthcare, education, and a strong economy, getting that money where it needs to go, we will find success as a state.
Mr. Braun, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Well, that's interesting when her party has been the party that's been borrowing and spending and grown the federal government into a
My
place
guy,
it's never been before.
we haven't had the
And
power
I
of
think
the
you're
person
on
in the state of
record for
Indiana in a
supporting
goddamn
Bidenomics.
long time.
You're on record for supporting all the policies of Biden
Oh,
and Harris.
Bidenomics.
That's what gave us inflation, and that is government spending gone out of control.
Mr. Rainwater, you asked for 30 seconds for rebuttal.
I just think, to be fair, fellow Hoosiers, that we should point out that it's Senator Braun's Republican Party that has a supermajority in our state government that has grown state government spending by over $6 billion since 2019. And
Rainwater
when you
is
add the money
killing
that they
it.
hold out their hand to the federal government and say, give us more, that adds another $10 billion to what they've been spending. So I think both parties are guilty of take, spend, spend, spend.
Since every candidate had the opportunity to rebut on that one, I'm going to move forward. And I'm going to ask that we limit our answers for this question and the next question to 30 seconds, please. Over 200 Hoosier voters from Dyer, Griffith, Valparaiso, Dairdale, LaPorte, East Chicago, and Winnemac submitted questions on the same two topics, right to work and prevailing wage legislation in Indiana. All want to know whether you'll support or repeal right-to-work legislation that allows employees in unionized workplaces to opt out of paying union dues, and whether you support or oppose prevailing wage laws that require contractors to pay workers at least the prevailing wage and benefits for similar projects in the area. Mr. Braun, 30 seconds, please.
So that topic comes up often. Getting union support for my run for governor means that you got to be sensitive to what they're interested in. And unions always have a place, especially up against large corporations. And when it comes to prevailing wage or right to work, I don't think that is the issue. The issue is making sure that they are heard, that you recognize the value of them, and making sure that it doesn't get into overdrive.
Mr. Rainwater, 30 seconds, please.
He said nothing.
Friends,
That was nothing.
voluntary association is very important in a free society. I believe very strongly in unions. My father was a member of the UAW for 41 years. Yesterday would have been his 86th birthday. But I want you to understand that we don't need government setting the rules for voluntary transactions between private citizens, whether that be an employer and an employee or any other.
Thank you. Ms. McCormick.
Our Common Sense Economic Development plan addressed this with making sure we're being business friendly, but also paid attention to human capital. And I am proud to have the support of those men and women who pack their lunch every day and they go to work to make sure they can make ends meet and get ahead. And I will continue to do that. There are a lot of things that we need to review and a lot of discussions we need to have, but I am proud of those who are middle class, hardworking individuals. And I don't want them to have barriers ahead of them.
Many Hoosier voters had questions about our polarized political landscape. Jamie, a child development director from Lafayette, says in their local communities, Hoosiers work side by side, play sports, volunteer, and generally treat each other in an endearing form of neighborly kindness, regardless of political views. She wants to know if you'll follow this example by listening to and serving all Hoosiers, including those who may not have voted for you. And we'll have 45 seconds each for this question. Mr. Rainwater, you can go first.
So, friends, I'm an everyday average Hoosier. Is
anybody going to say no to this?
I'm just like you.
Half of y'all.
I work a job. I work.
You know what I thought about it, and no.
And you know, the reality is,
when I turn
on the TV, when I see this stuff going on, they're dividing us to distract us from what they're doing to us as a government.
Who's they?
We need to wake up as citizens and realize that we are not the enemy. The government that is trying to create dependency and trying to make sure that we stay in line, that's the enemy, and we can fix that.
Ms. McCormick?
I know Senator Braun has spent a lot of time in D.C. and his conversations sometimes go there, but I will tell you he spent an awful lot of time where we were here at home and we were showing Hoosiers that there was a new way, and that new way was common sense, civility, and bringing back balance. We showed them we can work together with Republicans, independents, and Republicans, Democrats, and independents and libertarians in order to get things done, and that's been well received. That's why we have such a swell of support across the political aisle from Hoosiers. They're tired of it. They're frustrated. They do not want extremism. That's why they're like the Beckwith-Braun tickets, not for me. We're going for common sense and balance.
Mr. Braun.
Again, look at records. When you are passing more legislation in the areas I talked about earlier than any Republican and the most of any freshman senator, you're getting along with the other side of the aisle because you're picking something practical that doesn't invite the divisiveness that is out there. It is here. And when you look at what we can do in our own state, imagine how you're going to get along with a legislature that isn't going to believe in any of the policies you're espousing. So the only way we're going to take it to a level that we haven't seen before on reforming health care, which I did in my own business, is we'll have to be entrepreneurial, balance the budget, and get things done just like I've got a proven track record of doing. She does not.
Thank you. Ms. McCormick, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Yeah, there is no question that Micah Beckwith is the definition of divisiveness. No question. He's one heartbeat away, and he will have power in the state as number 2. And that is too extreme and goes too far for Hoosiers. And he knows it. Senator Braun knows it because he knows his values are aligned to the values of a lot of Hoosiers who also care about each other. And Micah Beckwith is the definition of divisiveness, and we cannot have that in the state of Indiana.
Mr. Rainwater, 30 seconds for rebuttal, please.
Oh, Micah is loving that he's getting
Friends,
mentioned.
I just want to point out something very important. Senator Braun has made it very clear here tonight that he is the ultimate insider with lots of government experience, and he's done a lot of things in government, and he's right in there with government, which means all the things that you're frustrated with the federal government or the state government, he's right in the thick of it.
Well, and Terry's comment just a minute ago, you're trying to work for the government.
He's not going to change anything.
Now it's time for our final question this evening. For this final question, each candidate has 30 seconds to respond. The question is this: why should voters cast their ballots for you to become the next governor of the state of Indiana? Mr. Braun, you'll go first in answering this
30
question.
30 seconds, let's go, nail it.
Statement.
It is.
Very clear. If you want strong leadership with a proven track record, a Main Street entrepreneur that built his life and career building a little business, having 3 of your kids work for it, and a lifetime of knowing what it takes to get along building a business and getting things done in a limited time you've been in government. I've got the record. Neither one here has it. And that's why, with freedom and opportunity, we'll take this state to a place it's never seen before.
Thank you. Ms. McCormick, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank the commission, the moderator, the signer as well, and to my fellow colleagues who are on the stage. Hoosiers, the choice is clear. It is either fear, extremism, and chaos, coming from a gentleman who tells us he developed his own company but acquired it from family, or it's about common sense and balance.
Gosh.
It's about someone who will fight for your
up and ran
freedoms,
him over
reproductive
again.
freedoms, academic freedoms, someone who will build our economy strong and who will represent us well on the national stage and not be an embarrassment.
Mr. Rainwater, you also have 30 seconds to state your case.
I'm just an everyday average Hoosier. I've struggled in the past with financial issues, career issues, family issues, just as many of you have.
Who hasn't?
I've fought hard to overcome those issues and to fight to rebuild my life in a way that I'm very proud of what I've been able to accomplish without the government constantly lording over me. And if you want somebody that can do that
Thank you, Mr. Rainwater. Candidates, on behalf of the Indiana Debate Commission, thank you for participating in tonight's debate. The Commission's a nonprofit organization that depends on volunteers and media outlets across the state to make events like this possible. The Commission also wants to thank our sponsors, the Indiana Broadcasters Association, the Indiana State Bar Association, and the Indiana Coalition for Open Government. Finally, thanks to all of you and our audience of voters for submitting questions and for watching and listening. Now it's your turn to make your choice and cast your vote in this year's election. For the Indiana Debate Commission, I'm Dr. Laura Merrifield-Wilson. Good night.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Merrifield-Wilson.
All right. Well, let's see. Let's go ahead and put that up. Unless Nova's coming on. You guys want to watch Nova together?
Oh, I love Nova.
Back and forth to music for like 40 minutes.
Let's go through the cosmos on Nova.
I love Nova too.
Yeah, Nova's amazing.
So, Corinne, what are your first thoughts here? What are your takeaways?
My fellow Hoosiers, from this evening's debate, I learned a whole lot of nothing. That I think Donald Rainwater, honestly, I mean, breakout star. He added such a different flavor. It almost felt, because the first debate that we did together when Mark was with us was just the two of them. It was just McCormick and Braun. And so this experience, having the third one in there, it is, it does divide the time even more, which I could tell. I think both McCormick and Braun maybe struggled with that, sharing it in thirds instead of in half. He definitely added a different element. And it was almost as if McCormick and Braun, they couldn't play off of anything that he was saying. So it was just like he was like chattering in the background and then they were really talking to each other. So Rainwater added just a different element for me. That was fascinating.
I definitely give Don the wingman of the night award because he definitely hit Braun a couple times. There were a couple times where they sort of ganged up on him.
Mm-hmm.
It never really seemed like the two guys ganged up on McCormick.
Nope.
The times when Rainwater wasn't laying into Braun for being, a big government insider, he was just kind of being a weird, rambling old guy.
From the beginning, and I wrote this, Mike Braun got his MBA from Harvard. And I don't know if I've ever seen him or heard him say that. I have heard him mention, he calls it his business degree. I went out of town, I got my business degree, I came back home and I ran this successful business. And it's like, he can't say the word Harvard, which is just so, it's so frustrating to me.
Normally Harvard people are really proud of that.
Oh, yeah.
But if you're going to cosplay as some blue collar guy, you can't say Harvard.
No, sure can't. You have to be, you just have to be a regular old person who works on Main Street, which as Jennifer McCormick mentioned there at the end, you inherited a business from your family. And I actually had to Google it because it's driving me nuts. Their distribution center is located on 25th Street in Jasper. Okay. 25th Street. It is not Main Street. The number of times that he says Main Street, Main Street, Main Street, like it's a freaking coffee shop, it is a gigantic distribution warehouse.
Yeah, you know what he's getting at. He's like, we're like the little downtown business, and I turned it into a big old thing. Yeah, no, not so much, guy.
I just hung up my shingle, and look what happened. Like that, that was probably from. At least seeing Braun a few times and even seeing him when he was running for Senate, that felt like one of his weaker performances to me.
He's not terribly good. He's not charismatic. Obviously he's successful at business in his way. That is a very specific skill set.
Yes.
Doesn't always necessarily translate over to governing,
It sure doesn't. But that's the only thing that he's got. And it felt like he answered so many questions with just a whole lot of words, and there wasn't anything more to it. It seemed like McCormick has kind of tightened up some of her answers a bit, maybe just to account for there being a third person on the stage. But the back and forth between the two of them was kind of fun. I don't think I'd seen that before. They pretty much like acted like there was a wall between them last time. And now they were kind of looking over at each other or gesturing to the other one. So that was, that was pretty interesting.
You can tell that this race being close is under his skin. Like, why am I not being coronated? I thought it was going to be a cakewalk.
I'm amazing. Why aren't you people seeing it? Well, I don't know if you saw, I saw in the Indy Star, or maybe one of the Indy Star reporters mentioned it today or shared it, that the Republican Governors Association gave Braun's campaign $500,000 more just on Tuesday. And that is pretty unique. I tried to do some quick researching to kind of see the last governor's races, how much Republican money has been poured into them. Because if it wasn't necessary, obviously they're not going to give Indiana any money. They're going to
they're going to spend it where they need it. Yeah.
But now he's got like 1.5 million from the Republican Governors Association, and McCormick now is up to 1.15 million from the Democratic Governors Association, which also speaks to the fact that Republicans are nervous and Democrats actually think she has a chance. She would be getting no money if they didn't think she had a chance, and he would be getting no extra money if they didn't think he was in trouble.
And she has proven to be a very formidable candidate. I mean, she's run a very good race. Not, Jen and I don't agree on everything, but she's executed extremely well. And her debate performances have been exceptional. She's not someone who comes out of that place. Mike Braun is a sitting United States senator. He should be able to hold himself in a debate. And she dragged him a couple times tonight.
Yeah. Yep. And in his attempts to respond, it was there was one sentence that he said where he had to throw in freedom and opportunity, just because it was like Rainwater was going through his checklist of like fellow Hoosier friend. Like Braun had his checklist of like, nailed Bidenomics. I got that one. I don't think he said Harris's name once.
He said Biden Harris. Like,
did he say Biden Harris? Okay.
Yeah.
He said Bidenomics, and I was like, okay, were we going to say Harris? But it was like he had his Rolodex of words up there, and he threw in like, well, we're going to make sure that they have freedom and opportunity. And it did not relate to the first part of his sentence. And see, again, I think that goes back to what you just said of like, why aren't you all just handing this to me? I'm saying all the right words. Like I'm saying patriot and freedom and
exactly. He's saying the words, but it's like, there's no humanity behind them. It's like his answers were written by AI, but like include these words in it. That's the prompt.
Freedom, opportunity. Yep. He did allude to something that, I mean, he didn't dig into it a little bit, but I'm sure it's something that's on the mind of McCormick and on McCormick voters, but he kind of alluded to, even in a scenario where she wins, how are you going to work with a legislature that doesn't like you? And it was not in so many words, but it was, how are you going to handle going in there? I have the relationship with the legislature that you wouldn't have because you're not one of them. And I'm sure that's on the mind of McCormick and her team of in this world where she wins the governor's race, even if a few Democrats pick up some seats in the state house and the state Senate, there's a super small chance that the supermajority will be gone, but there will still be a majority of Republicans. And the Republicans that remain, as we know, are not moderate Republicans. They are nowhere near the center. All of those Republicans have been kicked out years ago. So that is kind of an interesting situation that she could find herself in. And I thought it was Braun kind of alluding to that. I wondered if that was maybe him testing the waters a little bit of like, hey, if that's a tactic they may try, you're going to have to pick me. Yeah.
But I mean, given what our supermajority legislature has been responsible for over the last 10, 12 years, like I would take doing nothing over that. Like, you know, I would take the fact that McCormick's in office and has the ability to stop their worst impulses as an improvement. Like, sure, they might not be able to get things done together, but like, what kind of things would Braun with that legislature get done together?
Yes, let's take 4 years of maybe nothing happening, or maybe 2 years of nothing, not a whole lot happening, and then we chip away a little more at that legislature, and then we get a little more balance maybe after 2026. But yeah, I think 2 years of like chilling out and not stealing millions from our education system, and that would be great. That would be really great. And maybe like calming down on the property taxes, putting a little more money into our Medicaid system. Like, that would be wonderful. So yeah, you're right. If they could just like not do things, they've done way too many things. Way too many things.
Yeah. So do you want to sort of like, I was taking notes a little bit as I was trying to pay attention and be snarky and watch the chat and pay attention to you and everything else. But do you want to sort of go by not line by line, but topic by topic a little bit? And
sure. Yeah, go ahead.
What they did. So one thing, McCormick, she came to a line a couple times. Talk about candidates getting their lines in, right? Hers at least came off like organic. She said like a healthy and educated workforce a couple times. And this is something I was looking for her to do tonight, was to make the like business case for her candidacy. And I think in using those words, that's what she was doing. She used that phrase or something like it several times. And she's saying, without saying it, you know, companies don't want to come here because all of the talented people are leaving. And it's a very powerful case, I think, for especially a lot of those suburban areas around Indianapolis. You got your business class lives there. You know, they see what's happening, that they're having a hard time recruiting college-educated people to move to Indiana.
And that's, I think, and there are so many interesting dynamics to watch her navigate, especially as she's a woman candidate in Indiana. Everyone is super careful. I mean, we saw, and I didn't see it so many times tonight, but in the previous debate, you know, Mike Braun is using the word liberal as such an insult, because he really can't say crazy, because can't call the woman crazy, but we can call her a liberal. So there are so many interesting gender dynamics too. And I've seen McCormick attempt to evolve a little bit the message, because even for that group that says, oh, education or reproductive rights or whatever, these are your niche women problems, you know?
Right.
You know, like, oh, I don't really need to worry about, I'm voting for the serious candidate because this is about economics, right? And as if there's these two different things that are completely divorced from one another, as if education and reproductive healthcare is, you know, access and economics have nothing to do with each other. And we know that they do. They are incredibly closely linked. And no one is, you know, a workforce who is able to plan their family, have access to family planning, is a more productive workforce. So those are economic issues. And I think exactly what you said, trying to say healthy and educated. Yeah, people are not relocating their companies here if their staff is going to have nowhere for their kids to go to school. And if their staff is not going to be able to have access to family planning services, because that is a more productive workforce. And the fact that Braun, you know, just keeps hammering home these percentages and dollars, it's not resonating. So I do like that she said that today. You have to bring those issues out of This is not just powder room talk by a bunch of women. Like, these are family issues that impact all of us and do impact companies' bottom lines.
Absolutely. But now on her strong suit, education, obviously, but I mean, she really like rolled over those guys there.
They had nothing.
With they're so devoted to the concept of school choice because they're, well, Rainwater philosophically, Braun because that's what his donors care about. You know, they care about cracking into that sweet public money so they can, feed on it, and if the kids get an education, whatever, right? But get profit.
Yep.
And she really brought it home in terms of the actual effects on public schools and how much money is being siphoned out of them.
Yep.
And she's only got so much time to answer. I wish she could get into, the gross history of vouchers and what they really represent, and the twin goals of school choice, which are to, one, create a market for private education, and then, also to create a funnel for public schools to religious indoctrination.
Yep. And that's, I mean, she hit, I think one of the lines I think that was probably the most clear, especially for someone who, because maybe public education issues in general are not, the top priority for every single voter. So for a voter that maybe education is like 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 on their list of priorities, when she said, I am for parent choice and student choice, not school choice, I think that really resonated because she was really attempting to make that distinction between your schools that you're giving tax dollars to, your private schools, they're able to choose their kids. I'm all for parents being able to choose where they want to send their kids, but the school should not get to say no to that kid if they're receiving tax dollars. And that line stuck out to me too, because this has been called school choice for so long, and that's exactly what it is. It's schools choosing.
It's branding. Everybody likes choice. Choice sounds great. Everybody likes to have choices, but it's so nefarious the way Republicans make really gross public policy sound innocuous.
Yeah, and And of course, divided 3 ways, maybe she would have had a little more time to get into it. And she touched on it a little bit with Indiana's school rankings that we're 41st now. But, there still is no data. There is no data that school choice and voucher programs are improving academic outcomes. We don't have any evidence. Even private students that are supposed to be getting this amazing private education that their parents have just handpicked and chosen for them, their outcomes are not improving either. So
they were already doing just fine, right?
That's the kids who were
already going to private school.
Yep.
Were well resourced and could afford tutors and everything else, and now they're just getting a nice discount on their education that they can put toward a golf club membership or something.
Vacations.
Yes. Yeah. On property taxes, this should be theoretically something up Braun's alley, but again, he doesn't seem to have any real plan. He just tells people, we're gonna lower your taxes, but doesn't want to talk about how he's going to get there and how he's going to fill any gaps. It's wishful thinking. It's vibes.
And I would love to know what mayors and local officials that he's talking to that like his plan, because that's kind of my world in my other life outside of TikTok is, municipal finance, and his plan is a problem. It's a real problem. And for someone who claims to be so good at business, if business is his whole thing, then you should be really good at numbers and math and budgets. The math does not add up. And when you look at what you're actually saving people in the Braun plan, normal everyday people, we're looking between $200, maybe $400 a year in savings. To see 20 to 30% losses in public funding for public safety in schools, how is that a sacrifice, or how is that a win? And that's because I don't think he can actually talk about that. I don't think he can actually say, well, I'm saving you $20 a month, but your police department's really going to suffer. Like, he's not able to say that. He's just going to say, I'm lowering your taxes. And he can't say anything more than that because it's just a talking point.
Yeah, exactly. And it's this whole, the business mindset does not translate to government service, because as a business person, he's got options to, okay, maybe you have to lay some people off, and we know he's cut the insurance benefits within his own company, right?
Yep.
He's good at profit maximization, not necessarily at the hands of employee well-being, right? There's always that trade-off in business. Labor is a number you're trying to minimize.
Yeah.
But government service, like, you can't minimize the number of people you are supposed to serve or serve well. It's not supposed to work that way. It's not the same thing.
And this argument of like, well, I'm really good at this thing, so you should let me go do this thing because I'm going to be really good at it too. And if I just make them seem the same, if I make business and government seem the same, because we're all sitting around a kitchen table managing our budgets, and I can make it feel folksy, then somehow I can make this like square peg fit in a round hole. And it just doesn't, because like the same thing with the school choice argument, public school is there to serve everyone. They're not selecting who their students are. The government is also supposed to serve everyone. They are not selecting who their constituents are, how many of them there are. They are just there to provide services. And yet you do not get there by looking at it from a profit model. And I think the way because like you said, this should have been his bread and butter, right? Talking about taxes, talking about money. He even stumbled through that and didn't really have a solid response to that. Just him saying that like local, I'm still fascinated. I'd love to know what local officials like his plan, because it's not well received.
He's talking to are probably like, little town Republican mayors and sheriffs, and they don't have to worry about the kind of complex public services that you have to worry about in a larger city, or even a mid-sized city.
Yeah. And the legislature has been signaling for a couple of sessions now that they're not really comfortable with the property tax model in general. And well, maybe, it's just so complicated, and we're having so many problems with it. Maybe we should look at something else. So we've seen the service tax be proposed, taxes on services. That has not yet passed. And then they've also toyed with, no legislation has been introduced, but they are toying with just jacking up the sales tax to replace some of that revenue. And
that always winds up hurting the lowest people on the totem pole,
yeah,
right? Because that affects everybody, and the people who have to spend just for their necessities, they're always paying that sales tax, whereas the people who are buying luxury items, it's a smaller part of their, and whereas if you tax on property, you're at least getting property owners. So maybe, and I understand a lot of the needs with raising where the higher property taxes are
Yeah.
having impacts on, long-time homeowners, right?
Mhm.
People have been in their home for a long time, have it paid off, and now it's worth a lot. And I understand these things. We can carve things out for like single homeowners. But
Mhm.
let's talk about people that own a lot of property.
Yes.
That's where we need to be focusing our tax burden.
Mm-hmm. And it does feel like okay, it's so overwhelming. Property taxes are so overwhelming. Let's just scrap the whole thing. Okay. Instead of, taking a much more surgical approach, which they could, and say, let's look at our senior citizens. Yeah. Let's look at somebody that's been in their home for 40 years and now is retired on a fixed income. You could take a much more surgical approach, which would possibly involve, putting more money into local townships or into local counties that are there to provide financial assistance for their constituents. Indiana has wanted to get rid of townships for quite some time. That's another aspect of the state legislature that, like, those, you want to talk about local government, that's where your local government being closer to the people that you serve could actually be beneficial, and where some of that Indiana surplus that is sitting there could be reallocated to help the people who need it the most, instead of scrapping an entire system because you have a fairly small percentage who are suffering. Because absolutely, there are people that are suffering and losing their homes because of what their tax bills are. That should not be happening. And we could fix that if we were able to, I think Rainwater said a couple of times, let's listen to people. If there was a willingness to listen to those individual needs instead of attempting to reorchestrate an entire system out of panic. It really does. It feels like it's out of panic. Because I think we chatted about it in the middle of the debate, what economists are saying. That's a hard word. Economists are saying is like, look, you saw that everything
they're saying. Yeah.
Like the taxes spiked. Without legislative action, everyone will see a reduction in their bills next year without legislative action. So let's not panic, and let's start to look at those people who have those acute needs right now and get them help. We don't need to wait for another legislative session to help those people.
For sure. As we get toward the later end of the debate, McCormick and Braun scrapped a little bit.
Yeah.
And so he says, well, I've supported red flag laws the entire time. I'm totally for gun control. But she called him out on this, and she's called him out on several other things. I was like, well, yes, but when you had a chance to put your money where your mouth is and vote that way, you don't.
No, did not. And he also, I wish I could remember. I don't remember how far this legislation went, but the legislation to look into both at the state level and at the federal level to look into specific restrictions on like domestic violence perpetrators who statistically have a much higher rate of killing or injuring their former partner after a domestic violence charge. That's just looking at stats, and here's how we could greatly reduce violence, especially violence against largely women. Again, didn't do anything for that, would not even entertain that bill. That bill did not go anywhere in the state of Indiana. So red flag laws are one thing, but that's, again, part of the GOP message of kind of demonizing mental illness, because all the liberals...
They
go to therapy.
With the systemic problem, right? They have to push it off on the individual.
Yeah.
Because looking at things systemically is communism.
Yeah, because we can look down on somebody with mental illness instead of being like, well, actually, again, let's look at the numbers. What do the numbers tell us? Most people with mental illness are not violent. Now, listening to more of these debates is going to plunge some of us into a deep, dark depression, and who knows what's going to happen there. But thank God we only have 10 days till this election. But that's every time one of these incidents happens, it's always, they went to therapy, or they were on medication, or they needed more mental health treatment.
Yeah.
And then, as we see every single time when mental health funding comes up, they also vote against that too.
Right. Great stuff.
Uh-huh.
Well, I'll tell you what, Corinne, we're coming up on 8:30. We've been together here for about an hour and a half tonight.
Sure have.
Had a great time watching the debate.
Me too.
It went, I think, just as well as we could have wanted. I think McCormick gave another strong performance, as she has previously, and Braun didn't slip in shit, but he didn't say much of anything. He didn't really get any gotcha moments or excel in any particular matter. I don't think
so either. And even because I do like that Rainwater mentioned at the end his financial struggles, because that is the most recent attack mailer that Braun has sent out. Characterizing Rainwater as a deadbeat dad and somebody who had wages garnished or something. And I'm glad that Rainwater brought that up at the end of almost saying all of us didn't come into a millionaire business. So some of us have financial struggles. But if Rainwater is a threat to Braun, and the way that he is campaigning is showing that these mailers, I think, were just they were thrown together. They're really crappy pieces of marketing, honestly, just from a marketing perspective.
It's very much oh shit, we got to do something about this.
Oh my God, this Rainwater guy. And so even if Braun wasn't able to directly, attack McCormick or couldn't really go after her policies, from a strategic perspective, he could have been a little more prepared to maybe go after Rainwater. Because what Rainwater did, maybe not on the abortion issue, because yay, choice for everyone, but on the cannabis legalization, which is widely popular with Hoosiers, Braun stumbled and probably maybe we'll think about it kind of, concepts of a plan type of an answer. And I think Rainwater really made a distinguishing factor there. And that's an important issue for voters. So I'm really interested to see if that in itself will pull some people away from Braun and go to Rainwater. So
I fully support any squishy Republicans who out there who just can't bring themselves to vote for the hopelessly liberal Jennifer McCormick. If you want to go to Rainwater, please just don't vote for Mike Braun. As long as you don't vote for Mike Braun, you do whatever you want to do. So, but you go right ahead. I give you permission.
He's got a yellow tie. He's great. Yep. I mean, there was no attempt there for Braun to try to make any kind of, distinction between the two of them. And it was I can't wait to go read Twitter and hear about how everybody won the debate, because everyone's a winner after a debate like this.
yes, the Twitter spin room.
Oh my God.
Right. Well, I will let you get to that. I should probably eat something. It has been great hanging out with all of you. Corinne, thank you so much. As always, you are fantastic in this setting.
Just talking out loud. It's usually when I'm talking by myself watching a debate anyway. So this is fun to talk with somebody and not just to my cat.
Yeah, well, you feel less crazy if you're not shouting into the void. Yeah.
A little bit. Thank you so much, Scott. It's been fun.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, that's going to conclude our program here tonight. So for the impeccable Corinne Strait, I am Scott Aaron Rogers. This has been the Who's Left podcast. Love each other, Indiana.